Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast, your highest source of sacred truths and universal wisdom. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Rachel Fiori, mystic, spiritual teacher, psychic healer, and founder of Masters of Self University. Join our journey of soul transformation as we deep dive into this latest episode.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Masters of Self University podcast. I'm your host, Ellie Lee.
And I'm your host, Morley.
And today we're joined by MSU Mystical Life Coach, Rachel Baker.
Hey Rachel, welcome.
Thank you.
How you doing? How's everything going? I know yesterday we were just working through a big program that came up for you, and some wisdom kind of dropped in. So let's get into the meat. Let's get into it.
Yeah, this is like today's podcast. So that had to happen yesterday so that I could really talk about this today and have like this clicked in experiential knowledge to hand over and wisdom to hand over, because I wanted to talk about it, but it really anchored the topic in for me yesterday, that our mental, emotional, and behavioral programs, when the big wounds come up, the big dogs, they actually have a level of consciousness of their own. And the more acutely aware I become of them, the faster I can catch them, or the faster that I can ask for support with them, then they wreak less havoc on my relationship, finances, career. Whereas before, it was a slippery slope. I didn't recognize that it was the level of consciousness of the wound. And it would sound so convincing that I was supposed to go do this thing or make this decision, right? But I was making the decision through the wound. And now I don't have to do that anymore. And I'm like, oh, yeah. That's freedom. That's ultimate freedom for me. Because before, these things sound so darn good a lot of the times because my ego is so brilliant at tweaking things. And I've got to share another fascinating thing before I get too far away from this, is my ego, and hopefully you guys can kind of resonate with this a little bit. My ego has taken a lot of Rachel's teachings and uses it to get me to do what it wants me to do. So I've had to learn how to listen to the energy in which it's coming from.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
It's coming from this wounded little child's energy with the language of wisdom.
Yeah. Because the programs will do whatever they can to keep you safe. That is like when you really come down to it, a lot of this is about they're created to keep you safe. The
illusion, like we've got to back up a second. It's not safe. It's really not safe at all. It's a total illusion, and we get caught up, right? And we say these things, and I said it the other day. I was like, yeah, it's your ego keeps you safe by running these programs. No, it's the illusion of safety.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what it's there doing that because you and it thinks that by doing this, you're going to be safe. When in reality, all we have to do is learn to open ourselves to the pain. Because when we're young, that pain really hurts.
And also, because these programs have their own consciousness, they don't want to fucking die.
No.
They want to live. And even the word safety, this is what it comes down to. We don't have enough words in the English language. So, when you hear safety, you think, oh my God, it's so loving and warm. And it's like, no, these programs are doing it so they stay alive.
Yeah. That's what they were designed to do.
Yeah.
Good catch. I like that one. Because if it stays alive, okay, just yesterday, when all that was going on, Danny, I was recognizing in the moment that we were working on that wound that so divine truth was coming in at the same time. I was sitting here working on transforming this program, but the divine truth is coming in, and I'm recognizing 3-4 different ways in which I'm showing up in an extremely toxic way. So after dropping out of my head, finally, took me like 2 hours, but finally dropping out of my head and going here, I go to my partner and I'm like, how does it feel being in a toxic relationship with a toxic person? Why do you want to be in a relationship with a toxic person? He's like, oh my God, what kind of question is that? Is this your trick? Like, no, honey, I'm about to take full responsibility for how I'm showing up in this.
And you said something really beautiful, Rachel, of you were in your mind with it, right? So when you're in the mind, you're just in a shit of never ending shit, basically. And it was that moment for you where the moment you really realized it and then you dropped into your heart, where it was like the fuckery began to halt. And that's where most of us are, you know, we are trying to figure it out. We're trying to understand it. We're trying to put A and B together. And it's like, when you stay in that, that's where you will stay until the moment you're like, oh, wait a minute. I'm in my mind. I'm lost here. Let's drop in and come back to your heart. And then that's when everything unfolds. And then you have this. And then I text you this morning. You go, oh, I'm doing amazing. When yesterday it was SOS 911. And it was because you were trapped in your mind.
Yes.
And we all do this.
Yes. Yes. And thank God that I have this support system, because the brilliant thing about this is early in the morning, I recognized, okay, the program's here. It's running.
Yeah.
And if I don't reach out for help right now, I'm going to wreak havoc on something. Mm-hmm. If I don't get help, this one's a tough one. And I won't go into it because I guess I could. We'll see. We'll see how this unfolds. But when you notice that, oh, shit, it's here. This is the one that I've got such a hard time with. This one overtakes me, and it's very seductive. I like that word because it seduces you. And it does all its little manipulation tactics, and it will talk you into making a decision that later on, 6 days later, you're like, oh God, oh God. And I was really coming from a place of power when I made that decision.
Right. Fine line. Such a fine line. Yep.
So there was a moment when I was with Danny yesterday, and I was terrified of this thing because I know what this thing has done to me in the past. I'm terrified of it. It comes sweeping out of nowhere. It terrifies me. It wreaks havoc on everything. And no matter what, this is the trippiest part, no matter what Danny would say to me, I couldn't hear it.
Yeah.
I was like, that doesn't make sense to me. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yep.
I think we've all been there.
Mm-hmm.
When that stuff takes over, that programming that's so entrenched in fear, it doesn't want to hear. It doesn't want to listen. There's a little part of us inside that's like, nope, I'm not listening.
Yeah. Something that I'm moving through right now is if it doesn't feel intense, even though I know it's triggering me, I don't want to go into it. So I won't take the time to go into it because it doesn't feel intense. And then I realized, oh my God, this is just another deeper layer of programs that are tricking me to like not feel it because, well, it's not that painful. Yeah, but you're showing up unloving and yet you're putting yourself down and you're not advancing at all. And I'm like, oh God, fucking shit. I just fell into another deeper layer. And that's another thing is like, and you wrote too, the deeper you go, the higher level they are. Yeah. And it's like, man, after you go through the surface, then the deeper we dig, and it's like, it gets more intense in a whole different way.
Yeah, you've got to be really on the game, it's almost like a game of like, you know, you versus the programs. And the initial phase of when we're doing this work is we're really seeing the surface level programs, all of the things that are the big scary lights of like abandonment and rejection and maybe some shame and guilt and like all of the big lights. And then as you move through that, the really deep, gnarly programs are so hidden in your subconscious. And they're so hidden that you don't realize that you're running a program, which is the nature of an unconscious program. It's unconscious. We don't realize we're doing it. And the deeper they are, the more advanced they are, the higher level they are at hiding from us and manipulating us. And it's actually normally the subtle ones, the subtle little triggers that when we're able to go into those, that's where our big transformation happens, because they're the ones that are hiding the most. And therefore, they're hiding the most amount of pain.
Yeah.
This one, you know, and you hit it right on the head with that, because this one yesterday morning, wandering through the planet, not having this work, you'd have never known this was going on.
Exactly.
100%. Yep.
You'd just been like, blah, 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 yada, yada. You'd find a way to spiritually bypass and you would have moved on with your day. That would have been my story before.
Yep.
And that sucker would have merged its 3 dragon head later on and went patow. But I sniffed it and I was like, wait a minute, what are you? Why are you doing that? Why would you have ever said that in your mind's eye? Like, what the heck was that? Mm-hmm. And then it starts to bubble and emerge, and then you're asking more questions, and then it's right there in front of your face. Like, okay, you're something that if I wouldn't have paid attention to, you would have done something within the next 24 hours to hurt me inadvertently. You would have behaved in some way to your partner. Usually it's on Matt. Right? Because he bounces back, and I have used him. I've used him as that because he can always bounce back. He's forgiving. He loves me. He cares about me. And he's constantly on my dartboard. And like, I had to take responsibility for that finally. Be like, oh, wow, I'm totally abusing you. I'm totally using you. And I'm acting like a toxic you-know-what right now. And I knew that if I didn't get a handle on it, that he was going to take it on at least 36 hours from now. That man is going to have to take something. And I'm not okay with that anymore. But you're right. It was subtle. It was subtle in its nature. Mm-hmm. But I'm not willing to do that shit anymore.
Beautiful.
Right?
Powerful, Baker. Oh my God. It's huge.
And without going into too much detail, would you be willing to like break some of this down, just for everyone who's listening?
Yeah. So, how did it first roll out? Oh, this is so fucking embarrassing. Can I say that word?
Of course.
Yeah. So, I needed space. The kids need me constantly. Like, kids need approval and like, they just need a lot of attention, right? And I needed space, and he came home from work, and I said, hey, babe, I need some space. The kids have been like crawling all over me, right? So I went to lay down and read a book, and he came in and just wanted to check on me. And that was the initial trigger. But I didn't recognize until the next morning that I was ruminating over him coming in and asking me for attention when I specifically told him that I needed space. And I was working out, and I look over at this guy, and I was like, yeah, I bet you're a needy loser too.
Wow.
In my head.
Yep.
And that's where it got started. I'm like, oh, I know who you are. Mm. And then I went on this spiral of like, okay, what are the mental programs right here? What are the emotional programs? And I did the shadow blueprint, and it came down to one thing. I was taught how to hate and loathe myself.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And the work has offered me this gift. Because if you had been like, yeah, that guy over there is probably some pathetic loser too. I mean, shoot, you just leave it right there. Yeah, he probably is some kind of pathetic loser, just like my husband is. None of that's true. What's true is that growing up, I was taught how to loathe. So, yeah, that program then is like, okay, she's on to me. Oh, shit.
Yeah. And then it was resist and hide. Resist and hide. Let me throw everything at this guy right now that's trying to get me to look at this program.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. That's our defense mechanisms of when we're actually doing this work and going in and actually healing. Those programs that are in there, because they have their own consciousness, they don't want us to see in all of their glory what they are, because they know we are now powerful enough to heal that.
Yeah. And because there's pain there.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, you know, who wants to feel any of that? So it's easier to project. It's easier to shit on the guy at the gym who's just innocently working out. You know, the story, what we're talking about is bringing me to this story that I had with one client, and she came to session. I was like, all right, what do you want to work on today? And she's like, oh my God, I'm doing so great. She's like, I wasn't triggered at all this week. I've had a fantastic week. And I felt the energy of it was like, you're telling yourself that you had a fantastic week because every other week is so hard, right? And it doesn't mean that she didn't have a great week, but I could just feel like there's no way in an entire week you're not being triggered. There's no, unless you're levitating out of the sky and you're enlightened and light is shooting out of your eyeballs, you're gonna get triggered, right? And so I just started okay, let's just go into your week a little bit, right? And then she brought up this one very slight thing that I was like, just feel into a moment where you're just slightly pushed out of peace. And she brought up this one scenario that it was 30 seconds of her life. And when we started breaking it down into this huge wound, and she was like, I've never even thought about this. She's like, I've never even gave, and it's exactly, because it's the little ones, the ones that just go, oh, that are don't bypass that one, because that just pulled you out from where you were a minute before. So let's go into that. And so that's what it's reminding me of. We can't, don't avoid, no matter how big it is. People are expecting a tsunami. It's the little wave, that you got to look into and go into.
It's that tiny little comment.
Yeah.
It's that tiny little comment that you innocently make in your mind's eye.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ones that are the humdingers.
Yep.
Because you're so right. Yeah, your partner triggers you because, they're projecting their dumb shit all over you. And you feel that fight, flight, freeze in your nervous system. And you're like, I'm going to drop in and I'm going to alchemize this fight, flight, freeze. But when you're at the gym and you're like, yeah, you're probably just a pathetic loser like my husband. What? Who said that?
Yeah. Beautiful awareness.
It's a very interesting experience when you can really feel a part of you coming online and you're like, who's saying that? Because that isn't me. That is some dark shadow of my mind judges a lot in the gym as well. It's gotten a lot better as I've healed a lot. It will show up occasionally still. And whenever it does, I'm like, that is not me. Mm-hmm. Whatever that voice is trying to bring that other person down so that I don't feel small, that's not me. Mm-hmm. That's not me.
Well, so I've been sitting with this for a few weeks now of one of the nastiest feelings that a human being can experience from an emotional standpoint. Humiliation.
Yes.
So as I'm pulling up all of the places and spaces that I felt humiliated in my life, it's ugh, gross. So when we have humiliation, the feelings of humiliation in us, maybe you want to call it shame, we only know how to project that out so that somebody else feels just as shitty as we do.
Yeah.
Gross.
Because shame is the lowest frequency.
Other than grief.
Really? Interesting.
Grief.
Like in David Hawkins' book, I think shame, I want to say that shame, yeah, maybe shame or
I think in his book, it's shame. From what Rachel teaches, is grief. Yeah.
Well, whatever. It's gnarly. Like humiliation and feeling like you don't deserve to live.
Yeah.
Is so gnarly in your nervous system. And when you have a bunch of that bubble up, you literally would rather die, right? Take me in my sleep, oh Jesus, than continue to feel that way. It's the worst feeling ever.
Yeah, it's awful.
People who have depression would say exactly the same thing. Like, I would much rather die in my sleep than continuing to feel this way. And they want to medicate it. They want to get the hell out of those feelings. It's terrible, you know? And to say like, oh, you're going to have to 100% line up with this frequency to alchemize it. Oh, man, no.
Yep. That's why people bow out. That's why people throw in the hat. That's why people walk away, because it's too much. Can't handle this. And then it's like, oh, those are the other programs that make you make this decision. It's like, just recognize that there are programs. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people, like, I think something that Danny reflects and shows me a lot is how attached I still am to many programs. So I'm very attached to, well, I'm depressed and I'm sad. I'm still attached to the programs. And what you constantly reflect to me is like, oh, the programs are running. And I'm like, oh yeah, they're programs that are running because it's all I've ever known. It's all I think that I am these things. And, you know, Rachel teaches a lot about energetic detachment, but don't get that confused with bypassing. You know, they teach you, I was watching this video yesterday and this one was like, cut cords, cut all the cords. And it's like, gosh, stop teaching people to cut cords if they're not healing and transforming the energy. You can cut in your mind all day. I cut cords for like an entire year because I thought that's how I healed. And it's like, no, energetically detach it and transform them, because right now you're attached and you think that you are your shadow self and you're not.
If you have a part of you that is so attached to needing other people, needing other things, and you're just going around cutting the cord, what do you think that cord's, the program in there that needs, is going to do? It's going to find something else to just attach to.
Right.
Or it's going to just, wherever you cut it, it's just going to pick it back up.
Yep.
Like, unless you are going in at the root level, cut the cord, go for it. But go in at the root level, transform the reason why there is a cord there in the first place. Once you do that and that's dissolved, there's no cord. There's no attachment.
Yeah. It's just like it's like the discussion with affirmations and mantras.
Yeah.
Stop wasting time. Stop wasting energy saying mantras and affirmations. Stop wasting your time trying to go around and cut cords when you could be focusing that time and that energy on your inner work. Because if you have a certain amount of time every day to dedicate to your spiritual practice, it just would make a lot more sense from an efficiency standpoint and a functional standpoint to do something that could actually matter in the long haul and immediately transform something that's really, really wrecking a lot of good things in your life.
Yeah. The affirmations and mantra, man, I've had like two people in my life in the last few months who were telling me to use, and the affirmation particularly was, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe, when they didn't. And I'm like, y'all, we cannot keep doing this. Yeah. If you feel unsafe, you trying to reprogram. I remember I was working with this dude, and bless his heart, he's a great dude, but like he wrote me, like he did an entire recording for me to sleep with every night of reprogramming my subconscious mind to think differently than what I was feeling. Like even that, you're making me think something differently than what I'm feeling. No. Like that doesn't do anything, and that keeps us trapped. But it's disguised under the illusion of, well, you're doing the deep inner work. And it's like, no, you're just trying to convince the energy that it's something that it isn't. And also that's how we abandon the inner child over and over again. Like if your 3-year-old self came up to you and was like, I feel unsafe, you go, no, you're safe.
You're safe. You're safe.
You're safe.
You're
You're
safe.
safe. You're safe. It's like, what are we doing, y'all? Like, that's not, the inner child is like, what are you saying to me? Like, I'm not safe.
The inner child goes, oh, you're
not safe. Right.
Okay. Wall.
Yep.
Done. I'm good. I don't need to feel any of that, right? You were right. I am not safe. You have just cemented in the fact that I do not feel safe right now.
Yeah. You're not emotionally safe.
No.
So welcome to what most of us grew up with. Like, that's the same. So when you guys are talking about that, like, oh, I'm safe. In my environment, everything around me is safe right now. Yep. You're doing the same shit that your parents did to you to get you in this position in the first place.
That's it.
Avoiding you, denying you, dismissing all of the things that is actually going on in you with the same shit. Mm-hmm. It's just the same shit. And maybe it's wearing a different shirt and maybe you're giving it to yourself, but it's essentially the same shit. It's time to stop this. And when you have kids, I'm very lucky because I have like real world, like in the moment experience of what a child goes through. When they're worried and they're scared about something, I couldn't even imagine at this stage of the game saying, oh, there's nothing to be worried about.
Right.
You shouldn't worry.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You don't have any reason to be worried, child. Oh, okay. I don't have any reason to be worried. I should just trust my mom right now. But wait a minute. I do feel worried.
Right.
You know, and then what does a child learn? I can't trust my own feelings. Now all of a sudden I'm being told that my feelings are wrong. Yeah. That my worry is wrong. And now I've got to deal with that whole fuckery of programming.
Yeah. Yeah,
most of us feel like we're flawed.
Yeah.
Most of us feel like something's deeply wrong with us because they're like, no, there's nothing to be afraid of here. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. That's literally, I would tell my parents, I'm like, something's wrong with me. Like, I'm feeling so sad or I'm really anxious. And then I would get a laugh. I would get a dismissal. So then I thought, oh, something is wrong with me. Like, what I'm feeling isn't okay. And it's clearly not that serious. So the intensity that I feel, I'm making this up. And so then that's when and then I started putting all these masks on and like hiding who I really was, because who I really was laughable and dismissible, whatever, dismissive. So who I am, Ellie, you better hide that, because that's not what's going to get you to take people for people to take you seriously, or for people to really value you or anything. So I learned really young what I wasn't okay. So I need to survive. So I better put on a million masks and pretend to be something else than who I really was, which was deeply sensitive and deeply emotional.
Yeah. Which we all did. We all did. And on top of that, what's even more aggravating is setting boundaries down for your kids so they're not entitled little assholes. So it's like, yes, let us have our emotional experiences, but teach us how to not weaponize them. Teach us how to manage ourselves. Teach us that we're not entitled to things. This whole realm of understanding how to guide a child through these first 7 years is insane. It's insane. And I'm looking at it every single day as I'm doing my very best to help my children. I caught my daughter the other day weaponizing her emotions. Because yes, your emotions are valid. And you do feel that way. But right now in this moment, you are using them to get what you want. And I love what you said. And I'm noticing that if we get too far down into that, acknowledging your emotions, validating your emotions, letting you have your emotions, that little kids, they will exploit that. So we have to be really careful as we're talking to parents, right? Oh, let your child feel all their emotions, validate them, and guide them. Because how quickly we use our emotions to get what we want.
Yeah, connecting them to their power, just like we do with our inner child.
Yes.
You know, one of the other coaches who has kids brought this experience up recently, where they have a child, and they were saying that exactly what you're saying, of where the child now is like using well, I need to feel my emotions as a form of, you can't tell me what to do because I feel this kind of thing. And obviously this is where the mastery comes in, is being able to discern. And the hard part about all of this is we're talking about raising children in that first developmental stage of 0 to 7. It's really hard to do. And this is why we're also messed up, when we haven't fully walked that path ourselves. Meaning, we're all of us on this podcast, we're a couple of years into this work. We've not fully healed all of our childhood wounds. That means we don't have the roadmap or the blueprint fully to even walk a new child into this earth without knowing what exactly to do in every situation. It's just difficult.
But what's bad about it is that connecting back to where we started, as I'm watching my daughter in her formative years, she's still in the first 7 years, right? And my son's 10. The phrases that they say when they're overwhelmed with emotion are exactly what we say when our wounds get triggered. And they've never heard it before. It is you see and you experience firsthand the level of consciousness of a 4-year-old. You're like, oh my God. So I've coached people before, or I've been in that wound, and I heard the exact same thing that my kid just said. She said, I'm the worst kid ever. I don't deserve love. I'm bad. Something's wrong with me, Mommy.
Such a beautiful mirror.
Yes.
To see, it's a window even to see into what it was like when you were a child and how you think and thought. I was just saying this last night to Ellie. I was like, I don't need kids. I've already got an inner child that I work with every day. My role here as a coach is actually to work with the inner children of everybody else. So I'm working with kids all the time.
You're a dad.
And I'm a dad to a dog. But
it gives you a lot more compassion. So if you can see it through the eyes of a parent, mystical parent, doesn't mean you have to have kids, but you can see it through the eyes of a mystical parent, all of a sudden when somebody's running their programs, you get to then have more compassion and forgiveness for whatever's coming up in them, not only because you've experienced with your own self, but you've seen it in others, and you realize, oh, that's not the essence of who you truly are. Those are programs, those are patterns that you operate through because you're scared, because you don't know any better. And even working with my daughter, if I didn't have this work, I don't know what kind of shit I'd be saying to her. It'd be real bad, though. Not helpful.
But that, it's beautiful because of this work that you're doing on your own, and, you coach people on, now you can raise a daughter and a son to have these skills and to have these values. Like, gosh damn, if I was 6 or even if I was 10 and I got this guidance, I probably would have been a different turned out different. So it's like, you know, that's why, I don't know, this incarnation is so beautiful in that way, because we are shifting the tides. We are ending generational cycles, and it's so powerful.
And hard.
So hard.
God.
Oh my God.
Right.
Oh my God. So yes, 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 and yes. There are moments that you're just like, ugh.
Yeah. Do I know?
God.
Yeah. Truly.
I feel like I'm learning how to walk all over again. And I'm like face planting, and my knees are getting all scratched up. But if I was to share one thing with parents, with partners and relationships, I don't know. I guess just with anybody, it's like when you learn how to say sorry from an authentic space, you're like, dude, I'm so sorry. I just jacked that up. Here's what I jacked up. I take full responsibility. I'm not making excuses. I'm not justifying it. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm like, shit, I just jacked that up. Here's exactly what I jacked up. And I'm going to not jack that up in the same way ever again if I have anything to do with it. Would you allow me to try again? That's what I can give my kids. That's what I can give my coworkers, you guys. That's what I can give my partner. Now, not using my patterns and my programs as a crutch, right? Like, oh, it's because of my childhood woundedness that I treat you like shit and I'm acting so toxic right now. But being like, oh, dude, this is what just happened. I recognize it. I am so sorry. And I promise you, I'm taking a look at it. I'm healing it. And I don't ever want to do this ever again. Right?
Yeah.
God, how many things would that change in our lives?
A lot. Yeah, we do that with each other a lot. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, dude. I was just projecting and I want to blame you for everything. And I'm really sorry. You know, you can start, what happens on this journey is you start feeling the frequency and everything. And you realize you don't, because it's icky and it's low and it's like, it's unloving, you know, as we connect more to our divinity. If it's not divine, it needs love. and that's what I feel every time, like I do that. I'm like, oh man, like that's so not loving. And like, you're just like a bystander and you're just in the way of the ammo. So sorry.
It's all right. We all do it.
Sorry. Sorry, Danny.
Yeah, we all do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yesterday I was like, Danny, nothing that you're saying right now is making any sense. And I'm sure from a coach's standpoint, you're like, well, what the hell you want from me? I could be doing something else right now, like trimming my toenails or something. Why am I sitting on this call with you?
I'd already done that a couple of days ago.
Yeah, he did.
We're on vacation next week, so I'm sharpening up. As a coach, I mean, as a student of this work, you know, it's something that I've been through and I understand. So for me, it's like I understand entirely what you mean. Is when those programs are running, you can't see outside of them. That's the nature of them. They're unconscious. So you're like, none of this is making sense. Whatever you're saying to me right now, it's not sinking in. And then often, you know, as you move through the wound and you heal the wound and you work through it, then the understanding and oh, okay, I get that now.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because we're trapped at that level. Whatever level the wound is showing up,
yeah.
There's a 3-year-old. Now we're interpreting the world from that age of 3. As a coach, this is part of the challenge that we face is when we're working, guiding is inner children, we have to bear that in mind. But then the challenge is when you're working with either yourself or, you know, with clients. So when another age jumps in and interferes, when a part of our older, like a teenage self that was also wounded in this kind of line, this pathway, jumps in and starts resisting and messing everything up, and that's super challenging because then you've got to work through that part, and they can really be there to sabotage, like again, the defense mechanism.
Yeah, and I mean, before we log off here and say goodbye, you know, I really want to put it in some simple terms, because I think if somebody's on the beginning of their journey, they're not going to understand anything we're talking about right now. Agree or disagree?
Yeah.
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 So like, if this is your first time here and you don't really understand this work and none of this is making any sense, you have somebody in your life that you're like, God, they always act like a child. They want to argue about everything. They're super defensive. Everything's about them all the time. They're constantly blaming everybody else for their problems. God, what's wrong with that person? Take a look at what age they are behaving like. What age do you see when you hang out with this person? Let's say it's your mother-in-law, right? What age does she remind you of? If you were able to zoom out and just stop feeling your own feelings just for a second, because of course you're pissed at them. Of course you think it's all about you. Of course you think that she's a big bitch. But like, zoom out for just a second. How is she actually acting? Does it remind you of any age? And that's how you'll know that somebody is in the consciousness of this wound. Because grown adults, they don't act like that if they're actually grown adults. And I don't know if I've actually really ever met a grown adult out in the wild, wild world we live in. Like, is she acting 3? How do 3-year-olds act? Have you ever watched a 4-year-old in a setting with another child? That's mine. Give it back. No, I wanted it this way. You need to do it this way. I don't like it that way. Yeah. And if you listen to your kids, you're like, oh, wow. That sounds like that 76-year-old woman I interacted with the other day. But I couldn't see it that way because that person's little and that person's in an adult meat suit. And I expected the person that was in the adult meat suit to act like an adult, but I'm seeing the behaviors from that little one over there. And it might be an easier way for people to kind of connect what we're talking about here in like a real way. So you have a coworker who's very confrontational or shuts down every time you guys are talking about something that's, uncomfortable for them. What age are they bringing to the table? And it might help us understand a little bit more what that looks like from a consciousness standpoint. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what programs are you running when they're acting like when they're in their 3-year-olds? And then how old do you feel as these programs run? Which is a great exercise to see it in others and then feel it within you.
Yeah. And we get to see exactly how we were raised.
Mm-hmm. Because
everything that gets triggered in you as you're watching little ones, or if you're watching a consciousness of somebody else who's acting like that, most likely you're going to want to behave through how you were raised. You're going to want to project your upbringing out onto somebody else who's behaving that way. Maybe you'll come out as controlling and rigid. Maybe you'll come out as, I wouldn't say you're going to come out as permissive. I don't know if the permissive thing, I haven't seen that come out in my own stuff, but maybe you're the one who disengages from that, right? So it's amazing to take a look at this through that lens and from the detached place.
Yeah.
Like, can we detach from it for just enough time to be a witness of what's going on? Because then we don't have to judge it. And as soon as the judgment comes in, that's when it just muckies up all the water. Mm-hmm. You become a witness of how that person's behaving, what it's bringing up in you, and you can be in this non-judgmental space. And oh my God, so much healing can happen from there. But we have to be brave enough. I think that's a test of initiation, right? Is to be brave enough to detach, brave enough to become a witness in a space where I don't need to judge this. I don't need it to be any other way than it is right now. What do I decide to do about it in this moment for myself? That way I can show up for the other person in some kind of mature way.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Love it.
Yep. Well, thanks everyone for listening. If you want to work with Rachel, Danny, or I, or any of the other amazing mystical life coaches at Master of Self University, set up a free consultation with us to learn about our programs that we offer, one-on-one, group class. We also have a digital course called the Introduction to the Universal Ways of Oneness that I know, Baker, you are currently doing, and it's
amazing.
It's exploring your life. So you can do that coupled with the book that Rachel Fiori has written called Mason's Way to 20 Universal Ways of Oneness, taught by the Spirit of Enlightened Dog, available on Amazon. And like, share, subscribe, comment, do all the fun things. And thanks so much for being on this journey with us, y'all. It means everything. Until next time, we'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.